Well, there is no mechanism to push a country out of NATO. The only way Turkey leaves NATO is by its own decision. Of course, Turkey is an ally, but it's not a partner of the United States. It's not a partner of the European Union countries. And that's precisely what Bernard-Henri Lévy is talking about. Turkey has undermined American foreign policy with regard to Russia. The fight against the Islamic State in Syria has also undermined American efforts to contain Iran and arrest its nuclear development. Under those circumstances, it's very, very hard to think of Turkey as a strategic ally of the United States and the West more broadly.
Mm-hmm. What do you think happens from here? Does Erdogan back down in any ways? Does he care about this currency crisis? Or will he care when you get this eventual wave, massive tens of billions, if not some hundreds of billions, worth of defaults from his country because they've borrowed in dollars and euros?
Well, there's some evidence that despite his public rhetoric of hanging tough and making and encouraging Turks to exchange dollars and euros for lira as a nationalist virtue, there are some signs that he is becoming concerned. Yesterday, Turkey's ambassador to the United States requested a meeting with the National Security Advisor, John Bolton. That's being read as an effort on the part of the Turks to come to some sort of agreement on the detention of this American pastor, Andrew Brunson, who has become a flashpoint in the relationship between the two countries and, of course, contributed to the currency crisis. All that being said, President Erdogan has taken a very hard nationalist position when it comes to the currency crisis in Turkey's economy, declaring that the United States is engaged in economic warfare against Turkey. It's going to be a very difficult political climb down for him to move away from that and pursue orthodox economic policies that's going to fix Turkey's problems.
He wrote an op-ed in the New York Times over the weekend where he claims there are alternatives. You know, people say, oh, maybe he could turn to China, maybe he could turn to Russia, maybe he can turn to Qatar. Do any of those countries have the money or the will to help him out to the degree that he would need?
Well, there's two things about that op-ed that are important to recognize. One, President Erdogan only told half the story. I don't think we would expect anything other, but there's a long list of American complaints to go along with Turkish grievances about American policy. Second, he does have some options. Certainly the Chinese, which have positioned themselves as competent managers of the global economy, might want to come in and buy Turkey on the cheap. The Qataris have developed a strategic relationship with the Turks and have lots of money, but it's a tiny country, and Turkey's problems are vast. Really, the only way that Turkey is going to solve these economic problems is through relief through the international financial institutions like the International Monetary Fund, in which the United States has a very important say.
Right, meaning that if they did turn to the IMF, there would be the traditional economic pressure that the IMF puts on any country to mend their ways, let the central bank be independent, cut your spending, et cetera. And then there would also be the political pressure that would come through that process.
Well, that's exactly right. And there's a new twist to this. In late July, when unnoticed, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee passed out of committee unanimously, Democrats and Republicans agreeing 100% that the United States should not support any economic bailout of Turkey from the international financial institutions as long as Turkey is holding American citizens unlawfully. Not only is there Pastor Brunson, but there's at least between 15 and 20 other Americans, Turkish Americans, who are being held on terrorism charges, widely believed to be trumped-up charges in Turkish jails.
And the other motivation for that legislation, maybe you can explain to me, they are extremely upset about Turkey wanting to buy from Russia this air missile defense system, right? I mean, this comes up over and over again in any discussion you have with anybody about Turkey.
This is a very, very big deal. The Turks plan to buy the S-400, which is an advanced Russian-manufactured air defense system. Because the Turks will rely on the Russians for maintenance and software for that system, and because the Turks plan to have about 100 F-35 aircraft, the most advanced airplane in the U.S. inventory in service in the Turkish Air Force, there is the potential for Moscow to glean important information about the F-35. This is something that Congress is extremely worried about.
Yeah, livid. What do you think about President Trump's handling of the situation? What do you think about the tweet?
Well, I certainly think that you have to give credit where credit is due. The president has applied pressure on Turkey when previous administrations have been unwilling to do so. And we're starting to see some response from the Turkish government. Of course, one can be surprised. I think the tweet announcing tariffs last Friday, just as the lira was sliding, was gratuitous. It was, though, perfectly in line with the kind of president's way of going about diplomacy and applying pressure on other countries. But it was seen, the problem with it was that it fed into President Erdogan's narrative that the United States is engaged in economic warfare. But overall, I think the new pressure on Turkey over holding American citizens as bargaining chips, undermining American policy in a variety of places, I think is a welcome change from previous administrations.